not?
Susie's coming on right now, but there's a few people missing too. Like Rick Gordon's still missing.
That's okay. We can go ahead.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll let them in as soon as they show up. But you are now live.
Okay, I'll repeat it. I miss you. Welcome, everybody. I hope you've all weathered this storm, this crazy year that we never ever thought any of us would be dealing with. It has been obviously wasn't in the application form when I signed up, but I feel that the city has delivered services through an extraordinary period. And like I was saying, the one good thing I would say that has come out of COVID is that we are walking more and riding and discovering our parks and getting on the waterways and doing things that really are why we live here. And I want to thank this group because you all are making our lives better, making this environment what it should be and helping us leave the planet a little bit better than the way we found it. So I'm looking forward to today's meeting and thank you again. And let's get on with it. Thank you.
Okay. I think that everyone here, do we want to do introductions? I think everyone here has met each other before.
I did want to just do a quick round of applause for Jackie. So I'm very happy that we got through that vote, and I'm looking forward to having Jackie's lens throughout all the departments in the city. I want to thank Rob Savage for all the work we've done together and all the work you do that makes me look good. But Jackie is going to be such a great asset now, and I think that there'll be not a lot will slip past her. So I feel we're at a really good point. Sorry about that. Go, Jackie.
That's okay. And I had some questions about this new position. David, could you just give a quick description of how it would function?
Yeah, I should have this memorized because I got to do this in front of council several times and in front of council committee. So I should be able to just rewind and wind it back. But yeah, so the position is going to be as part of the city manager's office, going to be reporting directly to me, going to be my right-hand person for all things related to the environment, for sustainability, for resilience. Going to be able to influence what we do in the future in those areas, and going to be the outreach for those areas to the community, to all of you, and to the other parts and pieces of that. So it's a really important initiative for us. I can't wait to get Jackie in place for that and to start functioning.
Okay, well, let's do a quick round of
Jackie.
Yeah.
I'd just like to give a big thank you to City Manager David Jarrell for developing this proposal for the reorganization, the Deputy City Manager for Resilience and Sustainability. He really showed his ability to be a bridge maker and to bring Gavin and I together on this proposal and to present the numerous times to the City Council. Yeah, really looking forward to the future. And I think we'll have the presumably the appointment for that position within the next few weeks or months, I think, because the charter amendment takes a little while, but that's, I don't know, Gavin, that's ball's in your court on that regard. But hey, and thanks to Gavin, also really think this will be great for the city.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Very exciting time. So I understand from Julian, there was a press conference that the mayor needs to get to. So we're going to have to wrap this up a little bit earlier by 12:15. So we're going to try to move through the updates pretty quickly. Of course, we're here for your questions. That's why we do this, and have some time reserved for other issues that aren't on the agenda that the participants may raise. But let's go around real quickly and just do a set of introductions so everybody knows who's here. I'm Jackie Guile, the Director of the Office of Environmental Policy. Betsy?
Betsy McKeown, the Department of Public Works Engineer.
Elvia?
Elvia Thompson with Annapolis Green.
Okay, I'm just going around. Bevan,
Hi, Bevan, Vice Chair of the Annapolis Environmental Commission.
Rob,
Rob Savage, Alderman for Ward 7, Chair of the Environmental Matters Committee.
Jesse,
Hi, Jesse Iliff, Southwestern Road River Keeper with the Arundel Rivers Federation.
Joanne.
Joanna Ogburn, Chair of the Annapolis Conservancy Board.
Amy,
Amy Clemens, Spa Creek Conservancy.
Susie. She's on mute.
You mean Suzanne?
Oh, we can do Suzanne and come back to
Oh,
Susie.
only my husband calls me Susie. I'm like, oh, is there another Susie on? It's
Yeah,
Susie.
she's on mute right now.
You can call me Susie. Only people call me Susie who know me along since I was little, when I used to go by that. So Suzanne Etkin, Watershed Stewards Academy.
The other Susie.
Susie Smith, Goddess Chief of Staff.
Rick,
Rick Gordon, Department of Transportation.
I see Racine.
Racine Hodo, Office of Environmental Policy, that is now working closer with the city manager.
Great.
Is
Jim,
Woody here? Is Woody here?
Jim, I'm Jim Burdick. I'm the chair of the Anne Arundel County Seven River Commission.
and Jim, you're representing for this purpose.
The Seven River Commission.
Okay.
Thank you.
Betsy is on mute.
I'm Betsy Love, and I'm project manager for the Severn River Keeper program and project manager for St. Luke's Restoration of Nature.
And Mike Johnson.
Good morning, Mike Johnson, Director of Public Works.
And David, we all know David Gerald, city manager, and Sally.
Sally Nash, Department of Planning and Zoning.
Okay. Mitchell Stevenson is on, who's our PIO, sorry. And Carl.
I'm Carl Strass. I'm representing College Creek here, and I'm the Director of Conservation at the National Recreation and Park Association.
Okay, and I see, do we have any other directors on?
Archie Trader,
Okay.
did you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Archie. Parks and Recreation.
Okay.
Okay. The first item we have on our agenda, we have Betsy McCown from Public Works, who's going to update us on MS4 work, including the Green Vest progress. We get a lot of questions about what we're doing with city restoration projects and our contract with Green Vest. So Betsy's going to give us a quick update on that.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I've already introduced myself. I'm an engineer in Public Works, and I manage the Green Vest contract. So I'm going to try and go through this pretty quickly. What I'd like to focus on is the work that we've accomplished over the past year, and then what we're planning to do the following year. So just a quick overview, we are operating under an NPDES Municipal Stormwater Separate Storm System MS4 Phase 2 General Permit. We're entering the third year of a 5-year permit. We have contracted with Green Vest to help us with this work. That contract was finalized in October of 2018. The team includes, but is not limited to, Biohabitats, Environmental Quality Resources, EQR, and Princeton Hydro. We are working on preparing the annual report that is due in October for the previous fiscal year. Last year, we got very positive feedback from MDE on our progress on the permit. So right now I'm going to get into the programmatic work that Green Vest is helping us on. I wanted to give an overview based on the minimum control measures. So if you hear me say MCM, that stands for minimum control measure. So, and there are 6 of them in the permit. The first 2 are public education and outreach, public involvement and participation. And those are largely led by Jackie's office. Is it called Resilience and Sustainability? Jackie, is that the name of your office now?
It will be. Right now, we're still operating as Office of Environmental Policy.
Okay. So obviously the work that their office is performing will be summarized in the annual report that will be submitted to MDE. So MCM3 is illicit discharge detection and an elimination. GreenVest has completed stormwater infrastructure mapping in the Spa Creek watershed. This was a huge effort. We needed to map and inventory all of our stormwater infrastructure within the Spa Creek watershed. And the fact that we've done this is huge. And that's a permit requirement that we understand what infrastructure actually exists. And it's a lot of older infrastructure, which is why we focused on the Spa Creek watershed first. We are also GreenVest will also be finishing up IDDE, which stands for Illicit Discharge Detection and Elimination, and outfall inspections by the end of this month. The city is also working on legislation to provide more access to private property for stormwater inspections. So that's something that city staff is currently working on. MCM4 is construction site stormwater runoff control, and this is mostly led by Public Works through the grading permit process. Also, MCM5, post-construction stormwater management, is mostly led by Public Works through the grading permit process. GreenVest has been performing major updates to our BMP database, and Biohabitats performed 113 inspections of BMPs around the city that are helping us meet our permit requirements. We chose the BMPs to inspect based on the highest contribution to the city's impervious area acre credit. We've submitted those inspection reports to the property owners, and we're still getting some feedback, but that task is mostly completed. MCM6 is the pollution prevention and good housekeeping. This is led by all the departments with the assistance from the Office of Environmental Policy. And we're working on summarizing that information for our annual report right now. So the other component of the permit that's the big and the new one is the restoration goal, where we have to treat 20% of our impervious cover 20% impervious cover identification and complete a restoration plan. So the update and the work to the database is also helping us meet this requirement, and GreenVest and Biohabitats has been working on that. We've been working on updating our restoration activity schedule and the impervious area work plan. We have last year, I believe, GreenVest came and presented to you all on our impervious area treated calculations. We are in the process of updating that right now, so I don't have updated numbers for you, but I wanted to tell you where we were last year. The worst case scenario, which would mean that all of the existing BMPs are not functioning, would mean that we would need to treat 306 additional acres. The best case scenario, meaning that all of the existing BMPs are properly functioning, would mean that we would have to treat 5 acres. Clearly, we land somewhere in the middle there. I also want to mention that those numbers do not include Ellen Moyer Park, St. Mary's Living Shoreline, Hawkins Cove, Moreland Branch, and SPCA, and the Back Creek work that I will be talking about here in a minute. I am also going to be working on an RFP for the maintenance of BMPs. We think that GreenVest is better suited to be focusing on the programmatic work and the design and permitting and eventually construction of the Back Creek area. And then I'll be contracting with a different firm for the maintenance of the BMPs. And I know, Amy, that's something that I want to be in touch with you on as well, because you've fed me some good information. So that's on my to-do list, and I plan to complete that sometime early next year. Excuse me.
The city's going, the BMPs, GreenVest is going to implement them, and the city's going to maintain them.
Sorry, Bevan, you cut out in the beginning. Can you state that again?
Did you just say that the GreenVest is going to install the BMPs and the city is going to maintain them, or are you doing a maintenance agreement with GreenVest?
Okay, so essentially the GreenVest is a contractor for the city. So when you say
turn the video off.
Okay, it's just
city, but our thinking right now is GreenVest will design and construct the BMPs, and the city is going to contract out the maintenance of those through a different contractor. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm confused. You saying, Betsy, this is Betsy Love. I'm at Creek. We're working with Underwood and Associates at SPCA and Mariners Point in design.
Sorry, was that a question, Betsy?
Yeah, because you had mentioned that it would be Greenvest designing and permitting, and we're currently working with Underwood and Associates in the SPCA and Mariners Point.
Okay, yes, let me get there. We are going to be working on a project upstream of Bay Ridge.
Oh, okay. All right. I understand.
Okay.
Okay. I understand.
Okay.
Betsy, since everyone is asking questions, can I insert this question? College Creek is not a part of this program?
Sorry, I don't know.
Did I hear you not mention College Creek?
I am not aware of any projects in College Creek. Jackie, are you?
Archie, do you mean the work we're doing on the public access there in the park?
I mean, what Betsy is just describing as a part of her, what she's talking about. Is College Creek included in that?
No, the Greenvest projects right now are focused on Back Creek watershed and Spa Creek watershed. That's not to say that they can't in the future, or we can't at some point insert a College Creek project. But we had to start somewhere, and we started working with Back Creek and Spa Creek because there were a lot of projects already there and BMPs there, and we're trying to connect them all so that we have a top to bottom type of project complete in those watersheds.
Okay.
The waterways cabinet. So all the waterways will be addressed at certain times. So these are the ones that were currently in motion, right, Jackie?
Right.
Okay, understood.
Okay, so, other folks have brought up other potential projects, and as we do a recalculating of where we stand with our impervious area treated, we will then determine how we want to move forward from a year-to-year basis. So once we include all these other projects that I've mentioned and include the update to the BMP database based on our findings from the inspections, we'll get new calculations. And as Jackie mentioned, our thought is once we complete the work in the Back Creek watershed, we'd move to the Spa Creek watershed. So, okay, so moving forward, we're working with Greenvest now on their proposal and scope for the next fiscal year. They're focused on the programmatic scope. Will be continuing on the IDDE mapping, and we're going to be moving to the Back Creek watershed and continuing on with the BMP inspections. We have a separate scope of work with Greenvest to do the Back Creek design and permitting, and that is for upstream of Bay Ridge in the Timber Creek and Ambridge neighborhoods. We issued the NTP notice to proceed on September 14th, 2020, and we anticipate design and permitting to take approximately a year and be completed by October of 2022. We are now collecting.
What that project is? What are they doing? What is the project?
Stream restoration. And so we're looking at potentially excavating out a portion of what essentially serves as a dam, that embankment that divides the Ambridge and the Timber Creek neighborhoods. So we'd like to cut a section of that out and open it up and make it become a stream.
Betsy, I have a question for you. Does all your study include the Department of Public Works yard there that's bisected by Spa Road?
Okay, so that's over by the Moreland Reach. So that was one, I don't know, Jackie, do you want to update folks on the Moreland Reach?
Sure. So the Severant Riverkeeper program has put a grant application in to do a assessment of the Moreland Reach. We last summer, a couple months ago, we walked that whole area, which is a long area of public works, and Underwood and Associates and Severant Riverkeeper program walked it with staff. And we looked at some old BMPs and things that should be fixed, some old stormwater retention areas, and then, what the drainage area will be from the new public works facility site. And so Severant Riverkeeper Program put in their grant request to do an assessment of that entire area, what's failing, what's working, what needs to be improved, and prioritize projects. And then the next step would be to fund them. And also the Arundel County was there as well, because that area which feeds to Weems Creek, it bisects county and city land. So this would be a partnership, if it was funded, to do the work between the grant program the Severant Riverkeeper could get and the city and the county potentially kicking in funds.
I'm not sure that's the area we're talking about. The area. I'm talking about where Public Works trucks are right now.
Oh, where they are right now, sorry. Yeah, I thought you were talking about the new facility.
Yeah, right up against Spot Creek.
So our plan is to relocate to 39 Hudson. So everything will, once we get that project constructed, we'll move all the vehicles and everything over to 39 Hudson.
Well, I think but that part right next to Spot Creek needs work. I mean, there's going to be legacy material in the soil there from so many years of the Public Works trucks and everything. Yeah, I just don't want that spot to be forgotten.
I think, Betsy, I'm not sure about this. Maybe you can answer this. In the original feasibility study for Spot Creek, was that segment with the runoff from the old Public Works facility, the current Public Works facility, was that on our feasibility study for Spot Creek?
Not really, because that section of Spot Creek has already been restored.
This for a second, can I speak? We've been doing water testing in the creek for we're in our 5th year now, and one of the spots in the headwaters, we have 2 headwater spots where we do testing. One is at the Children's Museum Bridge, which is just at the Public Works site. The numbers are always really bad there, but we've never been able to specifically identify where the runoff there is coming from. We're just assuming the runoff from the Public Works site because of all the years of equipment. We know the soil's bad there, but as long as the soil's not disturbed, I think that part won't be a problem. But the outfall there, I think there's an outfall on Spa Road, just below Spa Road, and I think one at the Public Works yard. But again, we've not been able to identify the source of the bad numbers there.
Can I jump in on that? Because I think my understanding is that with the area you're talking about, Alvia, it does have a lot of issues because the old landfills there, and there are the 2 Public Works lots and the associated, any kind of legacy pollution associated with those lots. But my understanding is the city has to figure out, and the council, what we're going to do with that property. If it's going to be sold off, then most likely the buyer is going to be responsible for repairing things and bringing them up to the current standards. If the city holds on to it and decides to do whatever it wants to do with it, then we'll have to address it at that time. But I think it's a little early in the process to really figure out exactly what to do with it.
Bevan, and I work in the nuclear cleanup remediation, so you can't pass that kind of stuff on to the new buyer. The responsible party is the responsible party, depending on what kind of pollution it is. So I wouldn't count on passing anything liability off to a new buyer.
But we have a great opportunity because that is not the best location for Public Works, and a lot of things weren't being addressed even with a rebuild in that location. So I think the opportunity is going to get much more positive outcomes.
So I think in answer to Elvia's question, I mean, the Greenvest work that Betsy's summarizing is really stream restoration, wetland creation, living shoreline, that kind of thing, water quality. Now, yes, that land, the site there affects the water quality, but I think, Betsy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that really goes beyond the scope of what we do with Greenvest. And what it really is a question of, as Gavin's pointed out, what is the city going to do with this land? Who's going to take it? Will it be developed? How it will be used? And then when that happens, there's going to have to be site cleanup and remediation. which is contributing to the poor water quality that Amy's talking about.
Right. And so the AEC is also very concerned about the runoff from the salt dome there that you know is obvious it's from the salt dome and it's killing everything downstream of the salt dome and it goes right there into Spa Creek. So I mean that is something that we would like to see cleaned up, and we want to know about prevention of this happening again and impacts to Weems Creek with the location of the new salt dome where the new headquarters is going to be.
Good points, and those are things that can be designed into that site design at the new facility.
Mm-hmm. We want to hear about what it is, but we invited Public Works to come to our next meeting about that too. So,
Mike, do you have anything to contribute towards the new site design as far as stormwater retention and treatment?
Sure. The over at Hudson, in addition to localized like hotspot areas for treatment, like manholes for treating hotspot, we are actually designing the salt structure so that salt is retained within it. One loading will not, with the existing structure at Spa Road, it's not high enough for the load for when we take deliveries for the trucks to offload within the structure. So they have to tip on the ground and then it's pushed in. So that's a source of contamination that's structurally built into that type of structure. Over at Hudson, the salt structure that we're going to have there will allow trucks to back directly into the building and offload. So there won't be any residual salt on the outside of the structure. And then one of the other options to retain, depending on wind direction, is possibly a door so we could entirely close the structure. But even if we don't have a door, it would be of an adequate size, and the loading operation be such that salt contamination would not be an issue over at Hudson. And we could speak more about that.
Sure.
Once we have, the final plans, we could sort of show you and go into greater depth on that if you so desire.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Devin, this is Jim. Is there a meeting scheduled? You said I wasn't catching up on that. Is there a meeting scheduled about the Hudson Street?
Make the questions for me, just send it back to me. Okay.
We would love to have you come.
So I can expedite it.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah, it's an environmental commission meeting Wednesday next week, 7 o'clock. And to Bevan's point, real quick on the remediation might be, it sounds like a larger discussion to have at some point, but I think it's important to keep in mind some of the restoration work in that part of Spa Creek is something that you can tie to a new owner. So if they go to redevelop it, then they could be worked with to improve the outfalls or put stormwater management treatment on the site. So it's certainly very difficult in terms of figuring out next steps when you have the remediation to deal with as well from the landfill.
Just from my own knowledge, and I wasn't aware, I'm not really aware of the contamination, but you mentioned that the headwaters, the water quality is a bit suspect. Could you sort of mention it? What sort of contaminants you're seeing in your assays that you've done of the headwaters?
We, in the headwaters, we only test for bacteria mostly. And so it's been, the bacteria numbers have been very high there. And we.
So that's BOD. Are you testing for or E. coli? What are you testing for?
E. coli and,
E. coli.
Yeah. So, and we assume that a lot of it is from animals, because we haven't had the money to do like DNA testing or any kind of testing like that. Out in the Tidal Creek, we're doing testing for a lot of other, for all kinds of things, but in the waters,
I'm similar with 12. Okay. And if you
we're just doing the sampling and the mostly bacteria number.
Bacteria. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
could I add to that, in Back Creek, Amy's water quality monitoring has gone over to Back Creek, high bacterial levels in the headwaters. And during the site review with MDE and the Army Corps, both of them noted the erosion around the mainline sewer that is running through SPCA's property and across Back Creek. And they both recommended that I report this to you and to have an inspection done there and have it properly covered. There's been a lot of erosion since Betsy and Jackie and I walked through there, I guess from some of those storms that that were very large for a long period of time, but a lot more of it is exposed now. So we need to schedule something like that because they thought they saw leakage. And so anyway, I needed to report that to you.
Jackie, will that be part of Green Vest's IDDE work?
Betsy?
So I'm kind of unclear the specific area that Betsy Love is talking about. There's an aerial sewer. Is that the one that you're talking about, Betsy?
No, not the aerial one. The mainline sewer that's, oh, you didn't go through that walk with us, but Jackie Dial did. The mainline sewer it's not within the line of disturbance for the restoration, but it's just adjacent to it. And
Okay.
It's a very large exposure of the mainline sewer. And it appeared as if it might be leaking. We're not sure what we saw, but
okay. Well, I'll have someone from utilities go out and take a look at it because a leak is major cause for concern. So we'll go and take a look at that.
They did recommend that the city cover it properly, that it be covered. And I don't know whether you want to do that during restoration or separate or whatever, but they did recommend that it be properly covered.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. So to answer your question about Green Vest has completed the mapping of stormwater infrastructure within the Spa Creek watershed. Next year, they'll be moving toward the mapping of the stormwater infrastructure in the Back Creek watershed. So our sewer pipes in the area that Betsy is describing are already mapped. And then the outfall inspections is a separate task that Green Vest is leading. And yes, they are inspecting all outfalls. Does that answer your question?
I thought they were doing IDDE work too.
That all falls within the IDDE MC.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's just going to be for Spa Creek right now. Is that what you just said?
Spa Creek moving to Back Creek.
Got it.
But outfalls everywhere.
Got it.
Okay.
So if I could think, I was just saying to Suzanne's question, if I could just speak a bit more on that, an exposed sewer line would not really fall under the IDDE, parameters. That's mainly to determine illicit discharges that would be detected from the outfalls. That's where the water actually enters into the water body. And it wouldn't be sanitary discharges aren't allowed to enter into water bodies. So it would be a stormwater discharge in which you have someone putting something inappropriate into the effluent that's coming out. So that you test it to see whether that is occurring. And once that's occurring, you trace it back to sort of find a way to eliminate it. And that's the intent of the IDDE. If you have a sewer, as Betsy mentioned, if you have a sewer that is exposed, that is more an issue that utilities would have to deal with to ensure that you have integrity in the conveyance system, so that you don't have a sanitary sewer overflow, an SSO, to use another acronym. We love acronyms in this business, as you can tell, right? So we don't really want anything like that going to surface water.
Thanks for that clarification. That's
sure.
great.
Sure.
Okay, so Betsy, is there any other main points you want to make about GreenVest before we move on?
Yes, I just had one other point. We believe that we can achieve a little over 46 impervious acre treated credits through the upstream of Bay Ridge Back Creek project. We should probably rename that. And so going back to my numbers that I stated before, we're looking really good at meeting our permit requirements. And we believe that our annual report will make MDE happy again this year. So that's what I had summarized to tell the group. So Jackie, anything else that you wanted me to mention?
No, I think, and it's the next agenda item that this group will be interested in is Betsy and I have been working with the Chesapeake Bay Trust on an MOU to develop a partnership with the trust to administer grants that we will fund in the city. It's something, it's akin to what the county is already doing with the trust. And these are going to be for restoration projects, and it could be also for public outreach and education as well. But the city will focus on restoration projects. We're going to start this year's funding. It'll come from the Water Restoration Fund at $300,000. And the trust will be putting out requests for proposals in October for work that would be awarded in May. And probably many of you not-for-profits already participate in the county's program there will be the kinds of work we'll be doing that we'll be soliciting will be very similar to what the county has put out. Do you want to add anything, Betsy?
No, that's sounds great. I'm very excited. It's a really amazing partnership, and I'm just happy that we're doing it.
Bravo. Bravo. This is
Yay. Some more opportunities for you guys to get grants to do your great work within the city. And the other MOU that we have almost completed is with the Critical Area Commission. We have a fund of money, about $80,000 funded by our fee in lieu for when one-to-one replacement of trees can't be done in the critical area. And because of the restrictions on what we can use it for, which is basically tree planting and the buffer, we have not been able, the city is not always able to use that. So this pile of money just keeps growing. We've been working over the past year and a half with the commission to allow an expanded use of those funds, and we now have an MOU that will be voted on by the Critical Area Commission on October the 7th that allows us to use it for restoration projects even outside of the critical area, for shoreline planting, for living shorelines, and even to do boundary surveys and wetland delineations, and the costs associated with doing conservation easements, doing the surveys for conservation easements, which I know Joanna is very happy about. And another potential use is for land acquisition. Not that $80,000 is going to acquire a lot of land in the city, but if the fund should grow healthy enough, we could acquire some properties as well.
Hey, Jackie.
Yes.
You mentioned that among the other things that the MOU would enable the city to fund, one of them was wetland delineations.
Yes.
So what would the context of that be? Because if there's a development project, it's the developer's responsibility to pay for that. So why would the city pick up that tab?
If it was city property and we were going to do something with it. So you're right, the developer would pick up that tab. It's one of we were trying to be as comprehensive as possible if it was a city property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I mean, is it specified in the MOU that it is only applicable to city land? City-owned land?
This one is, let's see, boundary surveys, wetland tree surveys, and other costs. No, it's just, it has to be related to habitat and water quality enhancement. And of course, we would not exempt a developer from doing the work that they're required to do anyway.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
Jackie,
yeah.
just a quick on that money. I guess in terms of the land acquisition, could the city also use that to pay for easements? For example, you know, if we wanted to get some kind of easement to the waterfront for the public's use, so would that money be able to be used to pay for the landowner for that easement?
The way that what we've been, that's a really good question. I mean, we're thinking about it in terms of conservation easements. So we weren't thinking in terms of acquiring an access easement.
Okay.
Because it has to be, I mean, it really has to be related to water quality enhancement and habitat enhancement. So public access without that criteria would not fall within what we're contemplating here.
Okay, so but it could use the potential for some kind of conservation restoration easement along a private shoreline.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So the other update, I wanted David Barker to provide the update for the Severant River Association on the no discharge zone. He's been keeping tabs most closely on it through DNR, but David has had heart surgery, I just learned recently, so he wasn't able to attend today. But the EPA is getting very close to releasing approving and releasing preliminarily the no discharge zone. It has to be available for public comment. And this is for a no discharge zone for all the waters of Arundel County, excepting one of the creeks in Baltimore County and near Baltimore City and the Patuxent River. And then the SRA has a pot of about $16,000 funded by the county, by some clean marinas, and $4,000 earmarked from the city to do the public education and implementation phase of once the no discharge zone is approved. So we can't say what EPA will do exactly, but we're getting down to the final steps in this. So sometime we're hoping this year we'll see an approval and the comment period start, and then implementation for the spring boating season. So the timing could work out very well for next year. The next item on the agenda is an update on the Brewer Hill Cemetery work.
Jackie, before you go there, can I go back to the grants and MOUs for water restoration? Are there any K through 12 environmental educational attachments or opportunities or requirements for that to happen?
The funds can be used for education. The city is preferred to focus on restoration projects because we are trying to meet our MS4 permit. However, requirements, public outreach and education are criteria that we have to meet for our permit. And so those kinds of projects also would be considered.
Okay, but could they be incorporated into the actual project?
Into a project for restoration that includes education, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Of course, yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so Mike Johnson is going to provide an update on the Brewer Hill situation. Mike's
okay. Good word, situation. As everyone knows, this is quite a challenging project, and I'm sort of been working, since over the past few weeks to sort of get a better handle as to where things stand, and then to develop, the game plan that we have to, develop to move it forward and to completion. So I guess I'll just give a brief background. I don't know how familiar everyone is on this, so just indulge me a bit while I sort of just give a brief synopsis of the issues. There was construction, I guess, by Hyatt Corporation, who was a developer, and part of the agreement that they had was to take over the stormwater infrastructure associated with drainage off MD 405, and that goes through the cemetery lot to the College Creek. There's a swale that sort of takes water down to the College Creek. And somewhere during the construction, remains were unearthed, causing the construction to sort of come to a halt. The state was kind enough, SHA, to loan their archaeologist, Dr. Julie Sheblitsky. Sheblitsky. And what she discovered was that there were possibly 7 grave sites, 6 of which had monuments, had headstones, and 1 which was unmarked. And it's sort of the drainage issue that resulted sort of unearthed, I think, some of the remains, on the site. There's a lot of very heavy vegetation on the site that sort of makes it difficult to do a proper ground penetrating radar. The only way that you can determine if you've determined all the graves is through a ground penetrating radar exercise. But the very heavy growth of vegetation had some impact in impeding the progress on that.
Yeah, I'm just.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so I think Bay Engineering had been retained to come up with a sort of a plan as to how we would how the drainage situation could be remediated. And there was some bickering back and forth between the developer and the city as to really whose responsibility it was for respective portions of the work. So in a nutshell, it's sort of like that's sort of where things stand. So one of the things that we're doing, and I'm meeting with the cemetery, with Terry Brewer from the cemetery this afternoon, to go over, the city public works department can assist with some of the cleanup of some of the vegetation. There are some steep slopes. I kind of walked it the other day to take a look, a few weeks ago to take a look at it. And I observed that near the fence post behind, just off 450, there is a lot of undermining of the soil. It looks like there's a broken sewer line on the ground, storm sewer line on the ground, if I looked at it, if I'm gauging it correctly. So there's a lot of undermining of the soil, as during heavy flow, it will wash out the soil. You also have drainage that's coming off the Annapolis Federal Cemetery that isn't really properly being accounted for in the swale that passes through the property. So the vegetation is exceedingly heavy. So to see the exact lay of the land was kind of challenging. But I will sort of, in my investigations this afternoon, I will sort of figure out exactly what our equipment can do to remove some of that vegetation as part of their cleanup. If the slopes are too steep, of course, we cannot use mechanical equipment. It will violate the safety angles, which can be safely operated. And it's possible that we could use crews with weed whackers to sort of clear some of the vegetation. Once that is done, I plan to sort of touch base with Julie again to see exactly if, she has completed a complete archaeological investigation, as if she's confident that all of the buried unknown graves have been located, and that'd be step 1. 2, the engineer has to do a permit analysis so that we know exactly what we're dealing with. Because remains have been unearthed and some may be older than 100 years old, it might trigger, depending on the permits that are required, it might trigger a section 106, which is sort of an archaeological exercise whereby those remains and the remains of and the contents of the graves have to be sort of assayed and inventoried and re-interred. So those are costs which have to be figured out as to who would sort of do that. I mean, who would pay for that exercise? Is it the developer? Is it some other party, the cemetery, is it the city, is it the federal property? So those issues sort of have to be figured out, but it's predicated on the permit analysis that is done. I think the engineer had tried to come up with a sort of a fairly clever solution whereby they took the proposed stormwater conveyance pipe and put it up against the boundary of the two cemeteries. So to the east of the cemetery is the federal cemetery. So if the pipe could be put along that, it was felt that it might bypass the graves or future graves as it took water down to the swale and onto the College Creek watershed. So that is basically where we are at this point. So, to recap, basically, we'll sort of do some clearing, get a sense of what we're dealing with. Speak with the engineer to see what the permit analysis is that that needs to be done. Determine what permits are needed for the job. Speak with Julie to make sure that the architectural issues are sort of addressed, and then we will have to re-engage the Hyatt Corporation, the Hyatt developer, to sort of figure out how we sort of restart and take the ball over the finish line. And that's where we are at this point. It is sort of like a lot of things that are a lot of agreements that have to be consummated before things will be completed, but it's a bit of a sticky wicket problem. So that's where we are.
Michael, will there be any effort to contact relatives of people who are buried in the cemetery? I know that you have mentioned the archaeological aspect of solving this. Would it be any? Would it be good to contact some relatives? Because I actually have a grandmother there, great aunts and great uncles, in terms of locating their graves.
Yes, I think that Julie is probably, I mean, she had identified some, I think 6 of the 7 graves, the families of those buried there, whose loved ones are buried there. And definitely we would reach out to families if their graves are sort of felt, if we identify further graves, I think the archaeologist is best suited to help us determine whom to contact, and definitely they might be very helpful in terms of the outreach to the families. I think that the outreach to the families, you don't really want to startle people where they have fear that their loved ones' graves are being desecrated in any way. So it's something that I think is best handled by someone who has a bit more experience in dealing with that than say I would, right? I mean, as to how I would reach out to them. But long story short, we would reach out to families whose loved ones remains are sort of impacted by the work or the the project.
Well, I'll be representing my family. Actually, my grandmother is buried in a vault on top of the ground.
Okay.
And it's leaning towards it's on the side of the hill towards the military graveyard.
I see. Mm-hmm.
So, but we'll talk.
Yes. All right. So once we sort of get a better handle on what is impacted, whether Julie is confident that all potential graves, have been have been identified, that were impacted, have been identified, that would sort of determine the way that we move forward. I don't really want to sort of start a panic over that we're desecrating large numbers of graves, which that may not be the case. And, it may be merely it might be a localized region that's impacted.
Okay. I was just speaking on behalf of my family. That's all.
Sure. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Mike,
were there any other questions? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mike, I have a follow-up question. So it's been a little while since I've walked that property, but when I walked it before. I remember that not only sort of maybe up at the top where some work might be happening, but further down in that swale, there's significant erosion. And I tend to think that it's probably gotten worse since I've been there. And I'm wondering what the extent of that ground truthing for ground penetrating for graves is. Is it just being done in the area where the work is proposed, or is it being done, you know, throughout that swale and the path of the water?
I haven't had a chance to speak with Julie yet, but I would think that that we would sort of be guided by where the limit of disturbance is for proposed work. So if we, you know, if the LOD, the limit of disturbance is clearly identified, that would be the area that you would sort of want to do the ground penetrating radar to ensure that you're not, that your work is not going to impact any unmarked sort of graves. Because if it's an older burial, headstones could have been lost over time, not, you know, moved in some way, and you may not know that there remains under the ground. So that would be the area in which you know, I think it would make sense to do that. Julie, who's an expert in this area, would be better able to guide me on that, but that's just my common sense as to how I would approach it if I were doing it. But I would sort of lean on her expertise to sort of ensure that we do it totally correctly.
Great. So I would just encourage you guys to have a handle on how all of the graves in that cemetery are impacted by the flow of the water, because, you know, regardless of where the restoration work is going to be happening, the discharge water that is coming from that developed property might have impacted farther down than just the area, the LOD for the project.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, and I will take that into account.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Suzanne, I just want to let you know that Greenvest did look up that creek a bit. They did some probing up there just as part of their overall assessment of projects for the city, and did some initial surveys in there. So if the city did go forward with any restoration work in the creek, would have the same kinds of concerns to make sure we're not disturbing any graves, or if they're recovering of remains, that they're handled in accordance with the applicable laws.
Thanks, Jackie.
Mike, this is Bevan. Thanks for the update. I also walked that area with Alderman Savage quite a while ago, and you know, I recall that this stormwater was caused by the building, and that we still hadn't signed off on the Hyatt's permit. So I'm just wondering, for liability purposes, you know, who's in charge of this? I mean, it seemed to me clear at the time that it was Hyatt's building that caused this added runoff and the erosion. So I'm interested in what the negotiation is, what the stance of the city is when you're dealing with Hyatt, and figure out who's got to fix this. I want it to be fixed. I think we can, you know, let's move ahead with that, but figure out, you know, you know, who's liable for it and who's supposed to be paying for it. We can do that afterwards, but I would like the city to take a strong stance and have Hyatt pay for it, because I do believe that that's what caused the increased erosion there.
Mike, I can address that. So Bevan, we agree, and Alan Hyatt has agreed. So he's hired the engineering firm, Bay Engineering, to do the design. He's agreed to do the construction for the upper reach, which is what they're responsible for. What we want to do is look at a more holistic solution to this that would include the lower reach of the swale as well. So our state D30 delegation is very interested in this project, and is looking for money for us so that they can have SHA participate more than what they've been available or what we do so far. And we're also in touch with the National Cemetery, which is contributing flow to that channel as well, from just up on the other side. So yeah, we agree with you. Alan Hyatt has signed up for the design and construction. He's concerned about taking on the archaeological piece of it.
Of course, yeah.
Probably rightfully so. But he has agreed to contribute. And we have a document that he signed back when this development was done, that he took responsibility for that upper reach. So he's staying by.
Okay, good to hear.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions on Burr Hill? Okay, if not, I asked Rob Savage to update us on his legislation 03620, which deals with discharges from development sites. So Rob, if you would do that now.
Yeah, thank you. And this came out of, actually, just to show that I think we and the council, the mayor and staff are trying to be responsive. This came out from I think someone on the cabinet actually, but anyway, somebody in the environmental community emailed us about some trash that had blown off the South Annapolis Yacht Center project site during one of these big storm events. So they had a lot of trash in the creek. And it turned out that the law wasn't very clear in terms of requiring sites to keep everything tightened up and buttoned up and secure overnight or during a storm. So, this was just a quick request to the law office to get something drafted that would, it's pretty simple. What it basically does is just require them to secure not just the trash, but other potential pollutants. And so that includes things like any kind of debris, landscaping, yard waste, refuse, other pollutants that have to be secured on the site at the close of business to prevent any kind of threat of discharge. And it prevents the discharge into the floodplains, water resources, public streets, highways, sidewalks, storm drains, and other public thoroughfares. And this is put into the sediment control code. And so I have a number of, the mayor and I are joined by a number of other council members on this legislation. So I'm sure this will go through, but this is just a minor piece. And the mayor and I and others on the environmental committee really want to work on a larger overhaul of the sediment control program. And, we've had a chance to address the forest conservation and the critical area law, and those are really the strongest in the state now. And so I think we'd like to move on next to the sediment control and then stormwater later on probably next year. I was hoping to get some drafts started in this month, but it's probably not going to happen for next month. So hopefully at a future meeting, we'll have more information on that. But are there any questions about this specific piece of legislation?
Good. Thank you, Rob. Well, we are on schedule still, actually. We are 3 minutes ahead of schedule. And this is the portion of the meeting where we can, for you to raise any other issues that you would like to address or raise concerns and express them to the mayor and share with him.
I don't have a concern, but I would like to tell the mayor that I really appreciate the initiative that you've taken. It's been a long, hard battle to get to where we are. And I just want to thank you so much for making restoration and resiliency an easier path in Annapolis. And so to that, when we were doing community outreach for SPCA, we met with Mariners Point president, and she was very receptive of what we were doing at SPCA. Many months later, she calls me and says, I'd like for you to make a presentation to the board about a restoration at on our property. So we're working with Jackie Gild in that regard to fund a design and permitting process that would hopefully go simultaneously with SPCA. And that would treat nearly 400 acres of stormwater pollution that's entering Back Creek, and it will make an enormous difference in water quality. And I'm very excited about it and hopeful that we can do this together. The other thing I wanted to say was looking forward to working with Mike Johnson. Nice to meet you here. we're looking forward to working with you on Back Creek headwaters and closing St. Luke's restoration of nature.
Nice meeting you too.
I want to say thank you thank you, Betsy. Really, we're all in this together. We all have the same end goal. And I really want the next projects that are ahead of us to really be a model on how we made the corrections and how we got it right. Because I know, it's frustrating when you're just trying to do things and you're trying to move forward on what should be our highest priority. And it takes so long to sort of get things done. So I really am, Jackie is going to have full focus on making sure that these things go off without a hitch.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, to reiterate, I would like to just, emphasize K through 12 environmental education, and where feasible and where realistic, we can incorporate this type of education into the various water restoration projects in Annapolis. And I appreciate your attention to that matter.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, and to the extent that any of the participants here have programs they want to work with Parks and Recreation on, please do contact Archie. I connected him up with Tom Gay at Seven River Association. They're starting a whole education component for, I think, middle school and high school children. And Archie took them out. They took Archie out on their boat, and I think they had a productive discussion and start working together. So those kinds of relationships and partnerships would really help with Archie's plans with K through 12 education.
And Jackie, this brings up something that we asked about in our letter to Public Works, the Environmental Commission's letter to Public Works. We asked that when they were doing stream restoration or the stormwater runoff, the project installation, could they incorporate some, experiential learning for K through 12? So we thought that might be a good idea, a good area to bring them in and, see what's happening, how it's being built, why it's being built that way.
Mm-hmm. Suzanne, don't you usually incorporate something like that into your projects?
Yeah, we usually have outreach and education, but what I was thinking about is St. Luke's, actually, because there's been quite a bit of effort that Betsy started, and she can talk about it, but just to sort of transform that campus into an educational campus. And I think there's a lot more that could be done, maybe with some partnerships with Parks and Recreation and St. Luke's, because that infrastructure is there. I don't know how, I don't think they're ready to sort of be running some full-time, stuff there, but I think there's a vision for that. So Betsy, did you want to talk a little bit more about that? And we have stewards that could do, some stuff there too.
Right. There is a vision for that. And the bishop, actually the bishop of the Episcopal Church in Maryland was very excited about creating an environmental education campus. In the interim, however, there are many master watershed stewards affiliated with St. Luke's that fully understand watershed ecosystems and what St. Luke's represents in terms of restoring clean water and habitat and climate resilience. So while there are trails there that have self-guided educational signs that they can read, we also have a number of master watershed stewards that can lead tours through there. So anytime you want to do an environmental education tour with any children, we've done children's groups there and clubs and environmental groups as well. So we can design tours for any level of expertise. And it's a fantastic where you can teach about stormwater infiltration and how water is actually cleaned, and you can see the results from the top and at the bottom as water flows out clear at the bottom. It's a great teaching campus and easy to it's easy to walk. You don't have to walk down deep ravines and that sort of thing. So even us gray-haired people can do it pretty well.
Where is St. Luke's located?
It's in Eastport, right beside of the Eastport Shopping Center. It's 1101.
I know where it is.
Hey, Rich.
I know where it is. Right. Okay. Wow. Kind of embarrassed that I asked the question.
Yeah, it's
a field trip, Archie.
Archie, the best time to see it is when it's raining.
Yeah.
Okay.
The bigger the storm, the better.
My question was about public works and when we're rebuilding that new site and when they're putting stormwater controls there. And so it wasn't for the stream restoration. It was more like the city project. So the public works is doing for the new building. And could they incorporate some experiential learning for youth so they could see, you know, what the site looks like before it's built, you know, during the building and then afterwards, and learn about why it's being built that way and why we're capturing stormwater. So it's more like you know, like an engineering kind of focus.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I'll be in touch soon to St. Luke's.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Beautiful.
We also have a master watershed steward affiliated with St. Luke's, who's an environmental scientist from CERC, and he can do with microscopes attached to a phone. He can have children go through and take water out of the stream and look at the little critters, the microscopic critters in there, and it's just awesome. The kids absolutely love it. And we've seen children totally unassociated with nature and not really interested in the very beginning be transformed during one of these educational tours, because they get so excited at what is there, you know, what is actually there that they can't see, that the you know, the naked eye doesn't see. And so it's really a fun thing to do do these educational tours.
Yes, it's important.
Other questions, on other topics? We also have the Director of Transportation here and the Director of Planning and Zoning, just to remind you in case you have any questions for them.
Yeah, you know, Jackie, we had talking with the I don't know, it was the planning committee, the nitty gritty committee, I forget, it might have been an offshoot of that, about how we're working on making our bus fleet electric. I know you were working on that, and the Department of Transportation was also talking about that. And I'm pretty sure the state just came out with something that they wanted to do, you know, something about, you know, electrifying their whole fleet. And I was wondering if we could piggyback on any of their purchasing. You know, they can get better deals when you purchase in bulk and things like that. So wondering what the status was of that.
Yeah, Bevan, so the county executive just announced not a few weeks ago that the entire county fleet will be electric by 2040, I think it is. And they're starting with as vehicles need to be replaced, and they're starting with cars, like inspector cars and that kind of thing. But but they're hoping that by 2040, and it's not hope, it will happen, that the heavier vehicles will be available in electric varieties as well. And I know there's a great relationship between Gavin and Stuart, and, you know, maybe some of that group purchasing could happen.
So Rick is here and he can address some of these issues.
Yes. We've had some internal discussions here. There's quite a ways to go for us. Just attended the annual TAM conference where we talked quite a bit about it. In fact, someone did a presentation on it. One of the problems for us here in Annapolis is we don't use as large a bus as some of these other agencies. And there hasn't been a lot of effort to construct electric buses that are smaller than 36 foot, although it is coming soon. The other issue for us is the infrastructure to support these vehicles. We've had a little discussion there. We will be developing a plan to decide how and when we can implement electric vehicles. But given the current economic outlook with COVID, it's going to be a ways off, and 2040 may be a reasonable time frame for the city as well.
But Director Gordon, the city could start with passenger vehicles, like cars used by inspectors and so on, and the police. Police patrol cars are very doable on electric versions.
Yeah, Elvia, Rick, I'll address that. Elvia, that's what our plan is. That's what we've been talking about for a while, is as we need to replace the smaller cars, and then we'll gradually move up. You know, honestly, by 2040, there may not be gasoline engine cars even available any longer. We can certainly hope for that.
That's right.
But we plan to start with the smaller vehicles to develop the infrastructure that we need to keep those charged, and then to gradually move up to the larger vehicles.
Okay, you just made me very happy.
So I've been working with the fleet manager on planning for that. And one of the things we have to do first is the infrastructure. So BG&E is working right now on the engineering plans for Gott's Garage, because that's where we would stick, we would put our vehicles when Hillman Garage is demolished and being rebuilt. The city fleet will be moving over. Some of the city cars are over there already, but most of the city fleet will be moving over there as far as the passenger cars, some of the inspection cars, the ones that are used by Public Works and other departments. And so there will be, I think, 4 chargers, 2 fast chargers, and 2 L2s. So that would be, I think it's a total of 6 or 8. We're in conversation right now about how many we can put on they would be located on level 4. So we have to have the infrastructure to support our fleet, and that's what we're working on first.
Mm-hmm. If anybody wants to see the police car, an all-electric police car, we will have one at our Wednesday event on Maryland Avenue.
What time is that again, Elvia?
6 to 8.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other issues? Jesse, you've been very quiet.
A greenway that we had been talking about trying to do our comp plan. So I know that the Conservancy had been working on that and had a map. And so where is that? So if Sally could comment on that, and Joanna.
Yeah, do you want me to take a first crack at that, Jackie or Sally? Or if you want to, go for it.
Sure, go ahead, Joanna.
Okay. Yeah, so Bevan and everybody, so our Annapolis Conservancy Board, we had a subcommittee that looked at a number of different GIS layers, a number of maps, and identified a number of areas that we thought were important to include in a greenway map, because we're going to protect or enhance those areas for environmental reasons, recreational reasons, or community reasons. And so we have a draft map. We've given that over to Sean Wampler at the city, and she's creating a GIS layer out of it and a map that we can share around. She's also building us an online tool that we can use. And so what we plan to do with that is, well, first I should say the tool will enable us to send that to anybody, and then they can view the map, the draft that's been created, and then kind of circle areas that they think should be added, or that they have a comment they want to leave, and share why
that would
be added, or whatever
grant we got with the county.
Share. So she's building that tool. I'm gonna, I think, meet with her next week to see how it's going, and then we plan to send that out to a number of boards. Obviously, Annapolis Environmental Commission, Parks and Rec, probably Planning Commission, Transportation, anybody else that it makes sense to send it to. We want to send it to all the aldermen, as well as the African American Community Liaison and the Hispanic Community Liaison at the city, and any other community leaders, community connectors that we can, to get input on what areas are important to highlight in a greenway map for, again, environmental, recreational, or kind of community interests. And I talked to Sally and Eric about that, and our plan is we want to have that draft, all the feedback in, and a draft ready to input into the comprehensive plan update at the end of this year. So it'll be included in the draft that goes out to the public in the new year. And Bevan, I know you had some questions about what does it mean if a is included in the greenway map. And I think that's an ongoing question that kind of Sally and Eric and others would be good to kind of dig into there. And we can pull from examples nearby, like in Arundel County and other green infrastructure plans that are out there to kind of guide us there. But I think that's kind of an ongoing discussion that'd be good to have. Sally, do you want to jump in and add anything?
Right, that's a really good summary. Thanks, Joanna, and thanks for all your work on that and getting that moving. Yeah, as far as figuring out exactly what the implications of the map are, still work in progress. I'm thinking it will be something like what we recommended in the Forest Drive sector study. That we had a community character type called, what was it, Alderman Savage? Green, I forgot what we called it, the community character type for greenways. We would develop that some more, flesh it out from what was in that study and apply it citywide.
So that's the
environmental enhancement areas, I think.
How does that impact development properties or give the city any authority to move it around, or does the city, think about giving any sweetener to not develop, or, like tax cuts, or I don't know what the Forest Drive thing did, what what authority it gave you, what impact it had on properties.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. I think you said, okay, so basically what impact would it have on properties? I think that's still to be determined. What that exactly would be. Right now, we're really focusing on environmentally sensitive land, so it wouldn't be developed anyway. So that was our primary focus at this point anyway.
Yeah, and Bevan, I think to your point, the idea behind the green environmental enhancement areas was to kind of give a tool once it's identified in the comprehensive plan or just in the Greenway plan, then staff would be able to use that to use the provisions in the Forest Conservation Act and also in the critical area to use those to kind of protect those areas and hopefully even to perhaps use some of the fee and lieu money to get easements on any of those properties that even if they're not being solved for development. So yeah, I think that's essentially the idea, and then to use that to kind of build the network through the process.
So greenways in other cities I've been in, visiting, have, bicycle paths through them, and it's connecting communities and things like that. So I'm trying to figure out what the purpose of our greenway is going to be. And so, I mean, I guess that has a bearing on what goes in the map. And then, I mean, we really need to know this. And I would like to be involved in the conversation about the policy setting for what our greenway means, what effect it has, what legal implications it has, things like that, because if we need to get that settled before we go out to the public with it. Because
yeah, I think it's a good idea, and I think we do need to have that. I mean, so the idea I had when I gave Sally, Dr. Nash, my comments about the green enhancement areas was that some of these areas might be used. You might want to use those areas for expanding canopy. Not necessarily to be part of a greenway, but I think they oftentimes could be part of a large greenway. But also some enhancement might be for stormwater, water quality treatment. It could be used for restoration, could be used to put some other kind of B&P on a property that may not have any. Just as an example, the giant shopping center has this grassed area that I think at one point they were trying to put a restaurant in there, but that's been, for example, that site has no stormwater management, but that could be an enhancement area where the city or could go in partnership with the property owner to put some kind of B&P on there. So I mean, I think it's related to the greenway, but I think to your larger point, I think that connects with what Director Trader in his department in terms of transitioning, I think, some of this greenway that we have into an actual active recreation or passive recreation, I should say, opportunities.
It was just like, I want to thank Joanna for her work on that. Obviously, you're speaking my language here. We have to have a network of transit alternative options so that we can not, we're an 8 square mile city. So many of us could bike to work if we felt safe, if we felt protected. And these greenways are a great opportunity to do more of that. And we have great assets, and there's so many cool things that you could link to these greenways. So I'm excited, and thank you for all the work that you're all doing on that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it, and everybody. I'm really excited about it, and I'd love to share it with everybody in this group too. Once we have that interactive tool built to get everyone's input from this group, I think it'd be great. And anybody else you feel like would have good stuff to share, I think it'd be good to get their feedback. And Bevan and I think Rob alluded to this, and everybody. It's a great question. Sort of what are the boundaries of the Greenway plan? You know, and what exactly will it do and won't it do? And I think we've opened it up a fair bit at this point, at least from the board's kind of perspective of what we're thinking, and identifying places that are already good habitat or good for environmental reasons, right, that we may want to protect. And there are areas that could be enhanced and improved with plantings or restoration. And there are spots that would be great for recreational, passive recreational connections and kind of that transportation connection you're talking about, Mr. Mayor. So I think the important thing will be is when we sort of develop it, is to really specify what each area, what sort of we envision the primary benefits of it being, whether we need to have enhancements to get it there or protections to keep it there. So I think that's one big area where certainly our board has been focused on. And there's this sort of second area there, Bevan, which I think you were alluding to, that some cities do use Greenway maps for, which is to guide or influence development decisions. And so that's sort of like a whole nother piece that sometimes these can be used for. That sounds like it'd be good to have a whole nother conversation about that. But you know, it's preliminary, we're getting started. Would love all the feedback you guys have. I think once we get a lot of feedback through this tool, I would love to have sort of just a small committee, if you guys are open to it, or city staff, whoever, to look at all the edits that have come in and really think through some of these important aspects that you guys have brought up. So more to come. We're just kind of getting rolling here, but I really want to thank the city for, especially Sean, for helping us build this out, and Sally and Jackie and Eric for thinking through a lot of it. So yeah, we're excited. We're getting started. So any input is welcome. Please don't hesitate to contact me or anybody else on the board.
This is Amy. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if you can hear me. I have two questions, actually. One for you, Joanna, and I wondered if any places in parole were being looked at for as connections for the Greenway. I've met with Lon Powell and Terrence Wright out there about some other stormwater projects, but they are looking at a property on Old Forest Drive that Hyatt is going to be developing into a multi-use, I guess, residential and commercial, and hoping that there's going to be some greenway sort of trails, bike trails, walking trails that will be have to be, you know, ask Hyatt or someone to make sure that some of that is included, so that the parole neighborhood is connected with the other greenway, you know, paths that we're talking about. So I didn't know if you'd had conversations with the folks from parole about any of that.
No, I haven't had conversations. I don't think any of our board members have, but those individuals you mentioned, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think there were a couple of areas that have been highlighted around parole, but I would really need to dig in to give you a good answer. But I'd be happy to connect with you, Amy, and make sure that we get whatever areas.
Okay.
Speaking of, yeah, get them included.
And
yeah, I'll put you in touch with those folks.
Okay, that'd be great.
And Amy, I'd say that there's not a director in the city that doesn't look at a development with that in mind.
Right.
Everything that comes across Sally's desk now has, you know, a complete streets lens, you know, green space lens, anything that we can leverage out of development to enhance quality of life. We are pushing really, really hard on. And, you know,
Great.
I don't love it, but we keep pushing. You know.
Can I ask another question? This is for Sally and the mayor, I think, but I didn't know whatever happened with the grant, the state highway grant you were pursuing to help with the bike trail, like that crosses Hawkins Cove, from Hawkins Cove over to Truxton. I don't know if you went forward with that. We all met on that last year.
We did. We
like
haven't heard.
Back in March.
We haven't heard from DNR on that one, but we did get our Bikeways grant, which is good news, and that is to help us make connections between existing bike paths and bike facilities. But we still haven't heard on the grant is mainly to kind of look at Truxton Park trails and see how we can restore them, and also begin to explore the trails in Hawkins Cove. But
Oh, okay.
I know that
Great.
I know the trails at Truxton need some help.
Yeah, they definitely do. That would be great.
So on that note, of trails and, getting grants and things like that. So I had sent some information to Brian Callahan about the Great American Outdoors Act just passing in Congress. One of the very few and great things they just passed. It's going to bring, dedicate $900 million to the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And that provides grants, stateside and local grants for trails and recreation opportunities. So this is increasing the funding by 1/3. So any funds we spend on trails, recreation, recreation amenities, we ought to be applying to double that because there's a 50-50 match. So the locals or the state project, whatever, has to come up with a 50% match. So any money we spend, we ought to be matching it with that Land and Water Conservation Fund dollars.
And Sally,
Who's administering that in the state?
It's probably DNR. There's a state
DNR.
It's probably DNR. There's a state administrator in each state, and I have a list of them, so I can find out and send it to you.
It is DNR.
Yeah.
DNR,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Bevan, can you use DNR money to match that or no? Probably not.
Probably not.
That's a good try, though.
Use other funds, private partners funds, and there's also a certain percentage. I haven't pinned down what percentage of it is yet that can be in kind services. So like trail building, or there's public education and outreach that can be in kind like that of from our local nonprofit groups.
So just building on that, and I know we only have a minute or two left. When Bevan started talking about the Greenway and trails, I thought you were going to go to sort of the public access aspect. And I did want to just see if we could try to broaden the diversity of the community advocates that are represented on this particular panel. And then, so I'm wondering what efforts there are, to get some voices that are more diverse from the advocate side on this cabinet. That's number one. Then number two, when we were just talking about the opportunity for trails and other sort of infrastructure, if there could be sort of an effort to engage sort of a little bit more broadly in terms of identifying projects that would make use of those funds, just so that we're hearing from more people in our city.
Susanna, when the WE is completed, the West East Express, that goes through 3 different subsidized housing communities. So it's not just about a biking but it's also about walking and exercising and getting to jobs. So a person, that lives in Aubrey Court can get to a job at the hospital or at the mall or something, or a millennial or whatever it is lives over behind Double T Diner can get on that trail and get on an electric scooter and come the other direction. But it will go through Annapolis Gardens. It goes right by Bowman Place, and then it goes behind Aubrey Court. We are currently going to just do a temporary lane. We're painting in a 6-foot green lane in there probably in the next few months. We've got permission from the hotel to clean up the fences. And so there'll be a bit of outreach to anyone that wants to join in a kind of a Neat Streets effort there to just make that temporary version of it happen so that people start to get in that habit. And we've worked really closely with BG&E because when we talk about greenways, we know that they have so many of the physical easements in their control that we can repurpose to actually create the trail network that we need. So they've been a great partner, and they roll this city out and they roll me out in a lot of occasions as a mayor to work with as in terms of smart cities and connectivity and all that sort of stuff. So we have a great partner there and great potential.
Thank you. I think that's great. But my original question was really about broadening the diversity of advocates on this cabinet. Is there a way that we could, you know, bring some more people so that they have the seat at this table to be able to bring up issues and respond to things that they're concerned about?
So when the composition of the cabinet was put together, it was to have a representative from each of the rivers and creeks, as well as some of our key organizations, environmental organizations that also deal with water quality, such as Annapolis Green, and have Alderman Savage representing the environmental committee, and then our commission and boards, Environmental Commission and Conservation Board. I can talk, I know the mayor has to go to a press conference. I could talk to you more about this later, and would have to amend the document that created this group in the first place.
I think it's a good point that she makes, because I think one diverse group that we need to, and often make a mistake of not including, is our high schoolers and college age citizens.
Yeah, good point, Archie.
I agree. Yeah.
And I don't think amend anything to get somebody started and invite them to the meetings and invite them to be a rep. I mean, we can invite them before we amend any, you know, legislation.
Well, it wasn't legislation. We have a document that created this organization that was approved by City Council. If we included them as representatives of areas on the creeks and rivers, we could do that. But I need to talk to the mayor and the city manager about it a little bit more.
Well, we can invite them, yes, until we get the paperwork done. That's,
yep.
You don't have to wait until everything's in place. We can invite any guests we want.
Cool.
Any meeting.
Can I, this is Suzanne, the answer is yes. Let's get there. If you've got ideas, please let us know. Yes, we can expand. We'll figure that out. Yes, a more diverse group. Yes. The answer is yes.
I'll be in touch, Suzanne.
Yeah, thanks. And I think it's also incumbent upon those of us that are environmental groups to get more diversity in our leadership. So I know there's lots of us that are working on that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that we can stay timely with everyone that needs to go, I would say we wrap this up now, and we'll be sending out a notice for the next meeting. We'll do it in a more timely way. COVID kind of threw a wrench into things, and then it was summer, so we'll have another meeting. We'll have to figure out when we're going to do it. If we're going to do another one this year or the first one in January, as we did last year. Okay, well, thank you all so much for your input. Mayor Buckley, anything in closing?
No, I just want to say thank you. You know, every time I read a headline about another municipality or jurisdiction, and I think we're already doing so many things that other people aren't doing, and we're ahead of so many, and they get like a headline, and I'm like, we've been doing that for years, and it's all because of the efforts of the people in this group here and your networks that have put this city on the forefront of environmental initiatives. So I just want to say thank you. Thanks for including me and letting me be part of that. And we're going to do some amazing things together. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
Thank you.